User expertise and learnability. In this section, we're going to have a think about the different levels of expertise that our users can bring. And indeed, this is something that changes over time, and how do we best treat and develop our users. So crudely, and then this is crude, but it sort of gives you three recognizable points along a spectrum. We can crudely divide our users into beginners or novices. We can also divide them into a second category of intermediate users who are comfortable and familiar with the application, and a third category of expert users. These are individuals that use it a lot, that want to get as much out of it as they can in terms of all of the features and functionality. And in terms of the graph on the screen, the image, you can see some of the types of questions that the different categories I might ask. The beginners is going to be questions around, okay, what does it do? What doesn't it do? Where do I start? For intermediate users, very often it's a case of, oh, how do I do this again? Or what does that work? Or I've got this sort of particular niche need. How do I do this? And for expert users, quite often it's around, well, how do I do this as fast and efficiently as I possibly can do it? For most types of software, the grouping, the intermediate grouping is where most of our users will end up. We'll have some beginners, but we'll want to help them progress as quickly as they can into the intermediate, where they're comfortable with the application. They're not wondering about, how does this work? How do I do this? And depending on the application, you'll have a number then that filter into the expert category. But by volume, intermediate users are where we should put our emphasis. We want to make sure it works really, really well for that category of users. That said, if we don't support our beginners, we're never going to have any intermediate users. So we must also then support our beginners as they turn into intermediates. And of course, it's good as well to support our experts to make sure then that people can use it to get even more out of the application. So all are important, but quite often intermediates are something that gets to be forgotten. We should not forget about them. They're going to be the largest group by volume. If we have a look then how we can support each of these groups, well, we'll start off with beginners. First impressions count. They absolutely do. We want our beginners to be able to answer their questions about, well, can I do this? How do I do this? What does it do? What doesn't it do? As quickly as they possibly can, so they can see then the benefits if this is the right software for them, and they'll keep on using it. If our users become frustrated, if they get confused, if they can't see how to do things, we're not going to have them carry on using the software. So we must support our beginners and help them develop and mature into our intermediate users. So a number of things we can do there. Certainly from the design point of view, we want to make sure that the represented model, how we present the software, is closely aligned with the user's mental model in terms of how they think about the software. And we can do that through careful modeling of our users and their goals and their desires, and then how we design the interface. That's on us as a design aspect. And this is an important bit then, because when we're thinking about beginners, there is a difference between the idea of learnability and the idea of providing help or assistance. Learnability is all about how do we help the user learn something that is unfamiliar or unknown. It's the first time they've used this particular feature. How are we going to help them learn how to use the feature? Quite often when we think about help, it's more directed. It's where the user knows roughly what they want to do, but they can't remember some particular step, or they want to seek a bit of clarification. So there we're providing assistance. We're not trying to help the user learn something different, to learn how something works. We're trying to provide them with information that enables them to do what they know they want to do. Little side at the bottom, quite useful, that if you think about our beginners as intelligent and busy people, and that's the basis then about how do you take a busy, intelligent person and help that individual learn how to use the software. If that's how we're visualizing and thinking about our beginners, that is probably the right tone then to adopt with them to help them more rapidly turn into intermediate users. How do we support beginners? There's a number of well-established techniques that have emerged, and it all comes into providing contextual help. So it's offering help whenever it is considered to be the right point, whenever it's needed. And we want to do so in a way that manages or minimizes disruption to the user. We don't want to disrupt the user from what he or she was trying to do. We want to say, okay, so it's a new one. Let's provide this little bit of assistance and help so the user can learn how to do this. Overlays, guided tours, they offer two very common ways that you will be familiar with of doing it, and they're quite effective because for a variety of reasons. Overlays are, you can think of them as sort of transparent or semi-transparent images that are layered on top of the screen. And on the overlay, you can see some examples here on the screen. You may highlight certain areas, you may point to other areas and provide a little bit of annotation to say, okay, this is what this does, this is what that does, click over here if you want to do this. And that's just a way then of interjecting into the user's flow a little bit of additional information to help them understand the interface they are looking at, so they can then learn how it works and be able to use it more effectively. Similar to that is related to it is the idea of a guided tour, where maybe it's the first time the user's used the application. We might start off a number of different quite simple screens that says, okay, do this first and then do this, and don't forget you can do that as well. So it's just a very simple introduction that the user can step through. It's up to us to be able to design this so that we present the key salient bits succinctly. You can't have too many screens. 5's about the maximum you can do. You must provide a skip feature on the screens as well. And you'll probably find that quite a lot of users will just simply skip through them, which gets back to the fact that we want to make our software usable out of the box, as intuitive as it possibly can be. But both tours, guided tours and overlays, they're good tools that we can use to help introduce and help the user learn how our application works. For intermediate users then, what type of support and what type of characteristics do they have? So we said they're the most important group by volume, though quite often sometimes we can forget about them, but we shouldn't do that. For intermediate users, they typically need access to common tools. And those common tools have to be front and center, have to be readily available for them to use. They don't particularly need the function of those tools to be explained because they'll have used them before. So things like icons with tooltips just provide a little bit of an indication. They are visually efficient in terms of the amount of space and helps the user then be able to see where they are, get access to them with a little bit of contextual help if need be for that. Certainly anything, yes, we said here that anything that is used should be up front and center. So it should be available for the user to use easily and immediately through the interface. And the screenshot you can see here is a good one in the sense of we're using different menu bars and tool panels and different types of docks then just to present those common tools to our users. Intermediate users, they're generally speaking quite happy to consult reference materials if they need to remind themselves how something works. And if we want to direct them to some of the more advanced features, they can be quite sort of ready to have an explore if we nudge them to, well, if you thought about using this because you can do this more advanced feature, they may have an interest in exploring that. Expert users are our final category. And you might think experts, oh, they're using all of the really advanced esoteric features. Some might be. I think more likely expert users are people who just use the application day in, day out, and the things that are most interesting to them is really efficiency. It's being able to do things as easily as they possibly can, as quickly as they possibly plan, to get as much work, to be as productive as they can. As a cohort, experts tend to favour a lot of information available to them on the screen in terms of closely packed tools and information displays, which is fine because then it's all available for them. We need to be cautious here that for example, beginners probably would not value that at all, and it could act then as a potential source of confusion to them. Experts also tend to value shortcuts, macros, ways of automating different elements then of their activities or doing them more efficiently. And they cite at the bottom there are a small number of cases. It's not the typical case, but a small number of cases where it might be scientific equipment or ones used by a certain type of professional. So these may be an interface or for a piece of software that's going to be used by doctors or in a stock market by traders. In that sense, of course, you can assume that these will be expert users or all will become expert users. So you may want to then design that with your main group in mind. That doesn't mean the software can't be easy to use or shouldn't be easy to use. It should be. Users, expert users included, value a software that is easy to use, that is convenient to use. So we should always strive for that, irrespective of what type of user we're dealing with. So that's all we want to say then about or different types of expertise that users may bring to it, and a quick overview about how we might support users with different levels of expertise. It brings us to the end of our section, thinking about our users and thinking about how software should act and behave to users, thinking about accessibility needs, thinking about different types of experience. We're going to round things off in our summary for this section in the next video.